What's up, War Report family? It's your boy C Dub. In the spirit of portal season, we take a look back at the 2023 portal transfer class and determine if they met, did not meet, or exceeded expectations in the 2023 season. We discussed that as well as Auburn basketball's big win over Indiana yesterday on the weekend tailgate.
This is the Weekend Tailgate, brought to you by Golden Cast Iron. C-Dub, Ike Joe, Be Will, by G. You are now listening to
Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to the latest weekend tailgate, courtesy of Golden's Cast Iron. Big shouts out to them for being a huge sponsor of the War Report. Guys, support us by supporting our sponsors. It is a spirit of giving. So head over to goldenscastiron.com/WR. And there's two codes you can use. For weights, you can use code Get Your Weight Up to get 15% off of weights. If you got that family member, friend, loved one who is a gym rat, loves to work out, this is a great idea of a gift that you can get them. Also, if you know someone who is in need of a fire pit or a Kamado grill, use code TWR to get $65 off of those products. Mike G has taken. I think you got your dad a Kamado, right?
Yeah, man, he got a Kamado. It's pretty amazing. We cook on it often. It is one of my favorite things. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna cook on it today. So
nice.
Yeah, we're gonna eat some steaks today.
Nice.
Off the Kamado.
Nice. So definitely head over there, guys. Also, while you're at it, share this video, smash that like button, and subscribe if you just now found our channel. Also, get yourself a green name because Ike is still doing amazing work for members only. So how do you become a member, Ike?
Real easy. You click that join button. We're getting into off-season film mode. So like a lot of retrospective looks at football stuff. And we got basketball film. I got some great stuff that I want to talk about out of this Indiana massacre that happened yesterday. So look forward to that. If you're into basketball film, I will be breaking that down this week. So make sure you get your membership active. If you'd like to gift a membership like Auburn Dad has done already in this show, you could do that right now. If you're a member, somebody will get a free month's membership on you. And we appreciate that way to grow the War Report family. Hashtag get your weight up in the live chat right now. Sponsored by GWT2 Energy Consulting Services. There will be a mug given away to someone who is lucky enough to have their name flash across the screen at that time. And shout out to the network, all the folks who are here comprising the different voices in Auburn fandom that make up the War Report Podcast Network. We appreciate those guys at College Loop Uptempo Podcast. And then we here with the Auburn Express and Just a Sec pods. We're out here doing work, getting y'all all this great college football, college basketball content. Baseball coming up soon.
Gentlemen, listen, it's portal season. The portal opened up, had a few guys to depart. You guys have been tracking that last week with the morning drops. No need to rehash that. But what we can do is while the portal class is beginning to sort itself out, we may get some commitments in the next few weeks. Let's talk about last year's portal class. This was the inaugural portal class of the Hugh Freeze era. So it was pretty interesting to see what players he selected. What type of players that he went after. So let's kind of go through. I'll let you guys decide. You want to talk defense or offense first?
Man, let's hit him with that offense.
Oh, you
right now.
Offense first? Okay.
Right now.
Okay.
Let's get to the meter.
All right. Ike, I'm gonna lean heavy on you because you're the film guy for some of these players. So you have a very good feel for or idea of terms of how these players perform versus whatever expectations we had. So let's talk offensive line. The first guy that comes to mind is, well, let's get some of the guys out the way. Dylan Senda, who was part of the second window of the portal, he transferred as a result of the debacle that happened at Northwestern.
Yep.
Obviously, younger kid, highly recruited, but just got out of his deal with Northwestern. Came to Auburn, wasn't expected to contribute this season. So I think it's safe to say no real expectations for him. The next,
No, not this season. Yeah, he
not
wasn't
this
expected to
season.
contribute and didn't. So
Yeah.
So that's easy. Next guy is Jaden Muskrat, who was part of the second window as well, the transfer from Tulsa, who wasn't a lot expected of him, although he did play a little bit this season. So,
mhm.
you know, I thought he did fine considering that I wasn't expecting to see a lot of him anyway. But I don't know what you guys had thought about Jaden Muskrat.
I'll say that Jaden Muskrat probably met my expectations of him. I wasn't expecting a ton from him. I think he played admirably in the snaps that he did get. Let's see, looks like he had t- not a ton of stats for this season. 216 total snaps. Not bad.
He played.
Um,
He played, man.
Yeah. So, but what I like about Jaden Muskrat is we needed somebody to come in and kind of give us some more something at that tackle position, and he gave us some rotational depth there. I think that he played well, and I'm looking forward to him taking that next step, getting a full offseason program, coming in and actually competing for one of those tackle spots. We could potentially have two starting tackles that are transfers from Tulsa next year with Dylan Wade and Jaden Muskrat potentially come in. So looking forward to seeing how he progresses in a full offseason program.
Avery Jones. Ike, you was excited about this guy when
But
we got him out of was it East Carolina?
yes,
East Carolina, and I was excited about him too. In fact, I know that there were a few people who were high on him as one of our dark horses to be one of the higher performers along that offensive line. Obviously, the center is a very important position, so it was expecting him, given his experience, to really shore that up. Our thoughts on Avery Jones and how he performed this year.
I thought Avery did well at times. He's solid. He took a lot of heat when Connor Lou came in to spell him, and people were like, "See, throw Avery away." And Connor got some starts. Avery came back ultimately. I thought he did well. I thought he did well for his first season. Particularly playing at this level, right? Like the SEC is a monster. He came in and they had to figure some things out. He was playing with a brand new unit, right? And he was the center. The second quarterback on the field. There's a lot on the center. It goes overlooked a lot, I think, in this game. So I thought Avery, had, I would call it an average season, but it was sufficient to get Auburn where they needed to get in the run game. I thought the run game worked well. And the quarterback wasn't running for his life. Now I think play calling, I can't, and I can jump in here on how Avery graded out in terms of any calls he had to make down along that offensive line. Nothing really stood out as super negative to me about him. It was just, I don't know. I feel like when you're not talking about the offensive line, they're usually doing okay. And that's how I feel about Avery Jones. Like there wasn't a ton. I just didn't have a ton of talk about him. I thought that Connor Lou did well in spelling them, but certainly Avery was not as bad as some people try to make him out to be when he was not started for those few games. It was injury, I think, that sent him to the bench.
Right. Ike, your thoughts on Avery Jones, expectations, and how he performed this season?
He underperformed the expectations I had for him. I had really high expectations for him, but that doesn't mean that he played poorly. It just means that I thought he was going to come in and really give us. This is, Mike G said it right. The quarterback of the offensive line, right? He's a second quarterback out there. I felt like we lacked mature quarterbacking early in the season when it came to certain things, right? And that's not just Avery Jones. That's the actual quarterback as well.
Do you think the learning curve had a lot to do with that?
I don't know.
He enrolled early.
Yeah.
So, you wouldn't expect that to be as big of a factor. But again, at this level, could that have played a factor, you think?
I mean, it could have, but I just didn't see a lot of talking that I wanted to see from both he and the quarterback position. And I expected to see them up there really taking charge and getting everybody on the same page. Didn't see that a lot early in the season. As far as him blocking and doing what he was supposed to do on a play call, I think he was fine. I just expected more leadership from him at the center position to get us in the right situations, get us out of poor situations, even if you didn't get that call from the QB sometimes. And I just didn't see that a lot. So again, he underperformed my expectations, but I think he performed fine. Like, I don't think I had a ton of issues. A couple of, silly penalties, some silly snap stuff that happened for him during the season. I really thought he was going to come in and be dominant. Just physically, I thought he was ready. Mentally, I thought he was ready. And he came in and he played well, but not great. And I thought he was going to be kind of more on shading towards the great end of that spectrum. So underperformed my expectations, but I think performed admirably this season.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he met. I didn't have as high as Ike's, even though I do recall there were some penalties early in the year. There was kind of some head scratchers. Given
I mean, listen, he only
had
had 4 penalties on the entirety of the season, right? He played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games, 4 penalties. So it's not like he was
penalty machine.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Look, I thought the line was.
I thought he met expectations for me.
Yeah.
Thought he met expectations. Who I didn't think met mine. Now, I had higher expectations for this guy. So your synopsis for Avery Jones is what I have for this guy, Dylan Wade.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say Dylan.
So you can basically copy and paste Ike's comments for Avery Jones and put it for Dylan Wade for me.
Control C, Control V.
Yeah, pretty much. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm with you on this one. Look. Cole Kubelik could not stop singing Dylan Wade's praises this offseason. Every time he got on Mike, we'd be like, Cole, how do you think Auburn's going to do at QB? And he'd be like, well, Dylan Wade is a guy I really got my eye on. Like, look, he really felt like Dylan Wade.
With Cole, right?
Yeah, right. You made me think of something funny. So, like, the idea here was, going into the season, my expectations for him, I'm with you, Caesar, were higher. I was disappointed at some of the penalties he got. Now, you just talked about how few penalties Avery Jones got. I was the timeliness of some of the Dylan Wade penalties was really disappointing for a guy that we had high hopes for. Now, that's not something he can't clean up. This is not me throwing Dylan Wade to the wolves. It's just I had higher. He was the guy on the line. I had the higher expectations for to really just have one of those full send type seasons. And again, he's got the talent. And hopefully in year 2 of this thing, Dylan is a more complete offensive lineman.
Yeah, 739 total snaps this season. 10 penalties for him on the year. Now, he played all 13 games. So, again, not a penalty machine. But to your point, Mike, it was when they happened that made them so much more egregious. It's like a hold on a surefire first down where you didn't need to have a hold or a touchdown that got taken back because of a penalty with him. False start here and there. It was just the timeliness of those where it was like 3rd and short and you false start, and now it's 3rd and medium or 3rd and long. And it's just like, come on, man. Like the timeliness of them were devastating at some points to maintaining drives or, getting first downs. And that's just something he's got to clean up. But overall, as far as, again, how he performed when it was time to block, it was good, not great. Pass blocking specifically, he had some issues in pass blocking in some games. And his run blocking, though, I think was actually he was probably better pass blocking than he was run blocking in totality. If you look at just kind of how he graded out on the season, I just think that, like the penalties, it was the most inopportune time for him to have a bad rep, right? Like,
because usually that's when the offense starts trying to figure something out.
Yeah,
the offense had been struggling up to that point. Get a first down, but it's coming back because of his hold or whatever he did.
Yeah. So, hopefully to Mike's point, a whole another season of him at this level. He's the guy I think that probably had the most growing that he had to do as far as just the speed of the game at this level. When you look at the other guys that we had that transferred in, though Avery Jones, was playing at East Carolina, he was initially brought in out of high school at North Carolina, right? Like he got a P5 offer out of high school. So he was a guy who some guys scouting him out of high school said, oh, he could play at the Power 5 level. Now, it's North Carolina, the ACC, it's not like he got, SEC grades coming out, but he at least got P5 offers and a P5 scholarship right out of high school. None of the other guys that we're going to talk about that were transfers, that applies to. So I think that he probably, because of it being a tackle position and it's not really about strength all the time, it's about a combination of strength and speed, figuring out how to be able to deal with the constant pressure of speed rushers at this level athleticism. He probably had the biggest leap as far as just trying to understand the speed of the game. And I think he performed admirably, but to everybody's point, I think underperformed the expectation of him making that leap.
Let me ask you this, and again, this is not a slight. Shout out to Curtis Jackson because he had a comment in here that's basically in line with my next question. He basically says Wade is a guard for real. I see Auburn going out in the portal to get a left tackle so he can slide inside. When you're given Wade's size, is he more of a guard at this level or even the next level? So obviously he's trying to get to the NFL as well. Is he really a guard playing left tackle for Auburn?
6'3", 307. I don't know that one is better guard tag. Like he could play either of the positions. He probably does, from a skill perspective, translate a little bit better to guard at the next level. But if we don't get a tackle in the portal, he's going to be playing tackle again.
Pretty
right?
much.
So, because we've got a ton of guards on this team. Interior offensive line is not a place where Auburn is thin. It has always been for like the last 5-6 years been the tackle position along the offensive line. Yeah. And so in order for Dylan Wade to not be an offensive tackle for Auburn this coming up season, they're going to have to go get a surefire stud as a tackle. And he's still probably going to be at the 2 deep there at tackle. So I don't know what his future is, but right now he's going to have to play tackle.
Auburn needs him at tackle.
The other options are guys who definitely don't translate to tackle. They can't. Like, his versatility helps him be able to slide out that way, but like I can't name another quality tackle that Auburn has on this team. You got the freshman Tyler Johnson who could potentially do that. We already talked about Jaden Muskrat. But Isaiah Miller, who in my opinion was not good at tackle, and then nothing, right? Like, you just don't have any other tackles that are available on this team. So we'll see.
Next guy before we leave the offensive room, Gunnar Britton, who was also first window. This guy actually met my expectations for him. I was pleased with his play. But gentlemen, your thoughts about Gunnar Britton?
I thought Gunnar Britton met expectations most of the season. Just, a solid piece that they plugged in there. He had 1 year to play. He decided to play it here at Auburn. We had a chance to sit down with Gunnar at the fireside. I thought he brought a lot of good energy and leadership to that position room. And, man, let me tell you something. I mean, without the way offense went, without Gunnar Britton and Avery Jones and Dylan Wade, this season could have gone completely off the rails. Like, no bowl game off the rails. I thought those guys as a unit, led by Gunnar Britton, played pretty well, all things considered. For an offense that was for the most part one-dimensional most of the season, I thought they did decent in pass protection. Thorne's pressure rate was about average in the SEC. They were allowing, I think, about like 26% pressure rate, on Peyton Thorne. And for reference, low 20s is excellent. Mid 20s is about average, and anything over 30 is terrible. Your QB is truly running for their life if they're under pressure more than 30% of their dropbacks. So those guys did fairly well, I thought, at times this year. Again, it was average. It was just something that we weren't sitting here talking like fans had been saying the last few years, like, God, we can't do anything with this offensive line. They can't run any offense. Think about it. A lot of the conversations around the struggles on offense were centered elsewhere. I think people really got on the wide receiver room, guys, like they had been getting on the offensive line when Bo was here. And last year when Robbie started, I mean, he was running for his life last year for sure. Right. So I think that Gunner did a great job this year. 1 year guy, again, he talked about what it was like playing here against Auburn, and then suddenly now you're on the other sideline. And it's a lot. It was a lot to handle. Like mentally, I thought he did a solid job just kind of stepping in and playing like the experienced guy they needed. 1 year left to play. And honestly, when you get these 1 year guys, if they play at the level of a Gunner Britton, you're probably satisfied with what you're getting out of a 1 year transfer that's not transferring from another Power 5 school. I thought he did well at times this year. Again, I'm not going to say he was the greatest transfer Auburn's ever had at O-line, but I'm trying to think of some Gunner Britton penalties here, Ike.
He had 5 on the season, 724 total snaps, played all 13 games.
Yeah, man. I mean, whole games with no penalties.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like he had 5, 2 in one game, 2 in another, 1 in another. Like, so for only 3, he was only penalized games. 3 games the entirety of the season. Of course, a couple of those did feel very inopportune, but yeah, he was solid all year. He made second team All SEC as a transfer, playing multiple spots along the offensive line for Auburn. He played left guard, right tackle for the majority of the snaps. He was either at left guard or right tackle. Can't say enough about just his ability to adapt to a situation. But again, I felt like he was one of the ones kind of ready to make that jump. Physically, I think he's ready. 6'6", 312.
Man, a unit.
Yeah. And so he's a guy who has the versatility to be able to play multiple positions and do it well. I'm actually surprised we didn't play him at tackle more.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you, was he your other tackle potentially?
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get more reps at tackle, considering what I feel like we had at depth in the interior offensive line. But they felt better about, the best 5 being out there, having someone else out there at tackle. That's a surprising thing for me, is I felt like that Auburn would have benefited from him playing tackle opposite Dylan Wade more than Isaiah Miller, and then letting guys like Jeremiah Wright and Tate Johnson, even Connor Lew, coming in there playing guard when Avery Jones got back. I thought that would have been a solid 5 to get out there. But, listen, I don't get paid to make those decisions. So somebody else understood what they had out there in those 5, and they decided to roll with that.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, before we get to the break, let's start talking about our skill position guys on the offensive side. Let's start with tight end. Only one guy here in this room from the transfer portal, and that's Rivaldo Fairweather. Let's talk about it. How do we feel about him? Did he meet, exceed, or fall under expectations? He came in with some pretty big expectations considering the struggles of our offense. But what say you, gentlemen?
Okay, I'm going to go here. And Ike's going to correct me as soon as I'm done. I felt like he underperformed expectations, but I'm going to add a caveat. The passing game as a whole was a mess most of the season. He definitely paid some of the price for that, but honestly, he had some very untimely drops and penalties. He was not particularly good blocking, in my opinion. And the production in the passing game, to me, did not exactly offset the blocking stuff, right? Like Man, I was really disappointed in tight end blocking as a whole. The best blocking tight end didn't play very much, and that's Michael Riley. Yeah. But for a guy who, man, I really thought had the size and speed to make a splash in the SEC, I thought he underwhelmed. And again, I'm trying to make sure I'm clear here. I think Rivaldo Fairweather is super talented. I think he's got all the physical attributes. He can do most of the things. And I am attributing some of the struggle that he had this year to the dysfunction that was the offense overall. But there were some things that you could, like, listen, man, you don't need the ball thrown at you to block, obviously, because you're literally blocking. There are things that the things that you can do without the football. I thought he could have done better this year. So we're talking about how he performed versus the expectations coming in.
Right.
He was a little underwhelming. Obviously, he made some big plays for Auburn this year.
He was Auburn's leading receiver this year.
Yeah, right. And that's why I want to add the caveat. Like, look, there weren't a ton of opportunities out there, but I expected him to be that sure-handed guy that always made the play when you needed to play, and he did the opposite at times this year. And I think Peyton Thorne needs that. This is what I think, again, and maybe Ike will correct me here. I think that Peyton Thorne needs the Rivaldo Fairweathers of this team to make more plays for him than he's going to make for them. He needs playmakers. I think it's clear after year one, Peyton Thorne needs playmakers. He's not going to throw anybody open or he's not going to make anybody better. You got to help him out. And that's what this wide receiver class is supposed to be about, right? Helping the quarterback out so that they have some leeway. I thought that Rivaldo Fairweather would be a safety net for Peyton Thorne. And I'm not sure if he lived up to the safety net. And Thorne threw him some dimes at points this year. He gave him some opportunities. Some of those plays were made. Some of them were not made. I thought he could have done better. And I believe he will do better in year two. He's got all the talent.
I would say this before Ike goes. Given the struggles, given the type of receiver that Hugh Freeze likes, and given the struggles of some of those receivers that we thought could have filled or met the Hugh Freeze expectation of a receiver, this would have been a great opportunity for Rivaldo to stand out despite the issues that we had in the receiver room. The fact that he was serviceable but didn't stand out to me was a bit disappointing.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it too. I struggle because I don't want to be super critical of him. All these guys suffered from the system this year or whatever it was, all of them. So everybody's got that asterisk by any critique. It was, when it's not good, when you don't have a good game plan or, execution isn't high from other areas. You guys know how I feel about receiver. That is the position where you are in the least control of your destiny. You can get off the line quickly. You can beat your man. You can run the perfect route. And, other things can keep you, if the quarterback gets sacked or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The ball can just not get to you. You can do everything right and the ball can just not get to you. So it's tough at receiver. I probably grade on a larger curve for them because we have to evaluate so many things before the ball gets to them. And then we evaluate them, right? How well did the receiver do all the things that they were supposed to do to put themselves in a position to make a play? And like I said, I thought that Rivaldo Fairweather would be one of those bona fide playmakers for Peyton Thorne season. And I would honestly say I don't know if he had one at tight end or receiver. I don't know if he had a bona fide playmaker. Now, some of that is a function of play, and some of that is a function of the offense, right?
Right.
I leave it to you guys to assign percentage of weight there.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Say,
mean, I agree with everything Mike said. I think for the expectations I had of Rivaldo Fairweather coming in, I don't think he met those expectations. But again, like I said with Avery Jones, I had high
High
expectations for him.
expectations, yeah.
Him being the leading receiver for Auburn this season, I think is more a function of offensive dysfunction than it is
Yeah.
that Rivaldo Fairweather stood out above everybody else. I will echo the exact words. I thought he was going to be a security blanket, like just, hey, we need a catch. We're going to throw it up to this big body guy, make the contested catch guy.
Hmm.
And sometimes the QB didn't get it to him. Sometimes you tried to get it to him, he didn't make the play. Right. I had higher expectations of what we were going to do offensively, and a lot of that had to do with what I feel like Rivaldo Fairweather would provide for this offense. The biggest disappointment for me, though, isn't the pass catching, though he had 6 drops on the season, and I'm every drop that I can remember was pretty bad, right? Like it wasn't one
Yeah.
of those,
Yeah.
oh, it's kind of like, oh, they gave him the drop there, but like no, like every drop I can remember from Valdo, except maybe the one where he got hit in the Bama game,
Yeah.
mhm.
it was completely on Valdo for just not catching it. Now, conversely, he made some catches where you're like, wow, that's an amazing catch, right? So it's boom or bust sometimes with him. The most disappointing thing for me was the blocking, though. It's the
Mhm.
blocking. Like you can't be that bad at blocking and play tight end in the SEC or the NFL.
Yeah.
Like if you're
All
just
right.
going to be a receiving tight end, then just don't put him in the pass blocking set. Just don't like get him involved in some other way that just don't let this guy block if he's going to be that bad. But if you're going to trust him to block, he needs to be there and make the blocks, man. And he was, in my opinion, more often than not unable to make the blocks properly when he needed to. And to me, that's not a recipe for a 6'4", 251 dude that plays tight end. Like you need to be better than that. You need to be more physical than that. And he just didn't meet that level of physicality I feel like he needs to translate to an NFL caliber tight end. So he's got some work that he needs to do on his technique in the blocking and just because a lot of it comes down to physicality and just desire to go hit somebody in that instance. Some guys just enjoy it. Some guys don't. He didn't seem to enjoy that. And so they either need to figure out a different way to use him or he's got to figure out how to find that. So yeah, underperformed the expectations for me.
We will get to running back, receiver, QB, as well as the defensive transfers from 2023. But you are watching the Weekend Tailgate. Please be sure to share this video,
Mhm.
smash that like button, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Let's pay some bills, and we return to discuss the other transfers.
This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. When you work out, grill out, and chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com. auburnsports.com. For news and notes on all things Auburn Sports, head over to auburnsports.com. And our giveaway sponsor, GWT2 Energy Consulting Services. If you want the best in the business at restaurant logistics, head over to gwt2energy.com. Thank you to the sponsors of the War Report. Thank you to those of you who have already signed up for memberships. You guys are an awesome green name army out here, and we appreciate you every single month for how you show up for us. You can join us and be a part of this membership situation. It's really simple, $3.99 or $5.99. You pick your level that you want to participate, and that determines what kind of content you get access to. So much more content coming for you guys during football offseason. Basketball still in full swing. Promise to continue to get you guys great film reviews and great access. You can gift memberships right now if you'd like to in the live chat, and somebody will get a free month. Tis the season to give gifts, right? So gift a membership to somebody, and they get the gift of the War Report for a month on you. We'll be doing a mug giveaway here in about 30 minutes. Hashtag get your weight up in the live chat to enter the drawing. Sponsored by GWT2 Energy Consulting Services. Restaurant logistics is their game. If you want to start a restaurant or you have one and you need to get it in order, hit up GWT2 Energy Consulting Services. Also, make sure you connect with all of our guys in the network here. The TWR Pod Network has some great shows out there giving you a variety of perspective on Auburn sports. You can hear different opinions, different voices. they don't always agree with what we have to say, and they're not supposed to. So you can
Mhm.
hear what you want to from them, and we appreciate them for lending their voices to the Auburn sphere.
Gentlemen, let's get back into this conversation. We talked tight ends recently. I kind of gave a quick preview of the next group. Let's talk receivers. Let's start with the first guy who committed to us out of the transfer portal, and that's Nick Martiner, who was the Cincinnati wide receiver, committed the first window. He was hit by the injury bug. I can see Ike over there grimacing a little bit at the very name there. He was hit with the injury
when you
bug.
said wide receiver and transfer, I was grimacing at that point. So
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. Let's talk Nick Martiner as nice as we can.
Well, you led with the injury thing. It has to be noted, right? Like, he did not have a healthy season at all. And when he did get on the field, there was not a ton to get excited about. But opportunities, I keep going back to opportunity. What opportunities that we really have to see Nick Martiner? Well, so on this season, he had
3 total targets.
3 targets. He had the ball thrown at him 3 times. So
not a single catch.
Yeah, right. Like, he had some. There were some games where they threw him out there first with the ones, and it was for a guy who was. If you'd seen Nick Martiner in person, like, he is tall. He's supposedly a guy that would have the type of range that Hugh Freeze is looking
6'6",
for.
206.
Yeah, we saw him making one-handed catches in warm-ups. Like, he seemed to have good body control. It just weren't there. It was man, it's hard, Nick. We appreciate your contribution. I don't think he's got a COVID. I think he's done, right? He's done.
Yeah.
He's done. So, appreciate his contributions to Auburn, but it didn't work out. If I didn't have high expectations for Martiner, but whatever my expectations were, it went below that.
Well said.
Yeah.
I expected to see, I thought it would have been Martiner time in the red zone. Given his size, given his athletic ability, I expected to see a good bit of him when we got into the red zone. And the fact that we didn't see him, that in and of itself was disappointing to me.
It was
He's
tough,
clearly
man.
a matchup problem for anyone once we got down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I was not as high on Nick Martiner as a lot of people in the offseason were. I didn't see anything on film that made me say, oh, this kid, it didn't jump off of the film to me ever. Having said that, though, I still don't think I expected his use to be this poor. Like, he barely got any opportunities. So it's almost like I have to give him an incomplete here, because I don't know if it was he struggled in practice, so he didn't get his opportunities to see the field, because we didn't get a ton of production from the outside receivers at all. So it's not as if somebody was just out there killing it and he couldn't see this. I don't know what the reasoning was, why Nick Martiner never saw the field, or never saw opportunities when he did get out there. But yeah, there's not enough Nick Martiner film in an Auburn uniform for me to even be able to evaluate anything. And having said that, again, I didn't have super high expectations that he was just going to come in and kill it from the beginning, because I hadn't seen him. I would expect to see a few wow plays from a guy whose previous stops were Cincinnati.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I just didn't see any of that on film. Unlike the other 2 receivers we're going to talk about, you can see stuff on film from them where you're like, oh, okay, if they can do a portion of that in this league, they'll be solid contributors. There's none of that from Nick Martiner's film out there. And for a guy to be 6'6", 206, he's got all the physical tools to be able to do it. He runs well. He's tall. He's not he's slim, but 206 is still a fairly big kid. I mean, it's slim for 6'6", but still, like, there's nothing in the physical makeup of Nick Martiner that wouldn't allow him to be successful. So I don't know what it is about him that didn't allow him to see the field, but his opportunities on the field being so limited, I don't even know how to grade this. It's unfortunate that his last year of eligibility was basically spent on the bench, though.
Agreed. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. It was a tough go for Nick Martiner. You had 1 year and you weren't healthy for most of it. And when you did get in, there was no targets. The pass game was dysfunctional. It's like he had no shot this year. From every aspect, right? From opportunity, from a health aspect, this was a disaster of a last year for any kid in Nick Martyr's situation.
Which brings me to a similar guy, Jair Shorter. Transfer out of North Texas there.
Yep.
Second window guy who's actually back in the portal. We were unaware he had another year of eligibility, so he is pursuing it elsewhere.
I don't even know how. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years at North Texas and a 6th year at Auburn. How does he still have a year of eligibility left? 7th year in college?
Medical red shirt, maybe?
I don't know, bro. Anyway, or maybe this is a grad transfer year. He finally got his. I have no clue what.
No, but similar thing happened here too with him. I think he dealt with injuries during fall camp that put him behind the 8 ball. And
what was the game with the big drop over the middle? You know what I'm talking about?
He didn't have a big drop. He ran the wrong route.
Oh yeah. It was just not. It was on him.
Yeah,
that's what I remember. Shorter, it was another one, man. I thought, and we'll get to him obviously, but him and Hooks were like the dudes that people that to me had genuine hype coming in, and it never happened for him. Yeah. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but he went out with the ones game 1, right?
I don't even remember.
Yeah, I think
he was definitely on the 2 deep.
Jay, it was. Whew, man, I'm glad he's got another year. Hopefully, he's in a situation where he can make the most of that last year. But again, this would have been a disaster of a last year for him too. There's not a ton to say about Shorter that without being. I mean, he had 4 targets on the year and 1 reception for 10 yards. That was the totality of his season.
Yeah.
So again, whatever your expectations were, that had to be below it.
Yeah.
Because the only other expectation you would have had was just that he didn't play at all. 4 targets, 1 catch, 10 yards.
Which brings us to Shane Hooks. You already mentioned him.
Yeah.
You saw glimpses of Shane at points this year.
Yeah. Another guy with supposedly a really good catch radius. He had 9 receptions on the year for 133 yards, 2 TDs on 23 targets. Again, the opportunity, I think everybody got off to a rough start in the passing game. It felt like everybody had Jay Fair. And the opportunities just weren't there. To put this in perspective, guys, Auburn did not have a single receiver in the top 25 in the conference in targets, in total targets. The amount of times that we threw at wide receivers, it was so little comparison at the bottom of the league. It's tough, man. These guys just didn't get targeted. And sometimes I think when you're trying to find a groove or shake off that last bad play or catch up to the speed of the game, it's hard when you just aren't having any balls thrown at you. So I still think that Hooks is talented. I think he's a talented kid, but 2 things can be true here. He both underperformed expectations and the system didn't do anything to help him either. So,
yeah,
man, this receiver discussion is depressing. I'm
well, it gets a little bit better.
Does it?
A little bit better, yeah,
right.
Kind of. It gets a little bit, sort of.
This is gonna kill my vibe.
I mean, listen,
Caleb Burton.
Hooks was the guy, in my opinion, that most heavily underperformed the expectations for me. Even though, again, I hate to say this, I was never as high on Shane Hooks as a lot of people were. I thought from a physical standpoint, Shane Hooks was going to be another one of those like Rivaldo types where it's like, okay, the QB can just throw it in his vicinity. He'll go up and make a play. He didn't get a ton of those chances to do that, but the times he did, you didn't see him go up and make a play all the time. And that was disappointing for me.
Yeah. To add to that, another one of those guys I thought would be a good safety net for Peyton Thorne.
Yeah.
You got to find somebody, throw it up the hooks, and he'll make a play for you. Right. And he wasn't that guy. I thought he would be that guy.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it sounds like I'm bagging on the receiver group. And I really feel like it was a total dysfunction from a lot of ways. Like, I don't think that we particularly utilize these receivers to their strengths. It was more so do what we're asking you to do, as opposed to, hey, you do this really well, let's put you in these. Shane Hooks was a guy who, if you watch the film with us in the preseason, the vast majority of the stuff that he caught passes on were just the quick, like, we're going to go up and run a little 4 or 5 yard stop route, and then he makes somebody miss in the open field.
Yeah.
He didn't get a ton of those opportunities this season for whatever reason, right? Like, but those opportunities should have been there because of how much teams were keying on the defense. So I don't think that we utilize Shane Hooks to his strengths, but also as a mature receiver, Shane Hooks didn't show that, right? Like, he's a guy who, this is his 6th year in collegiate football. He didn't show himself to be a guy who really had the ability to be a next level receiver. He's got next level athleticism. Again, 6'4", 191, kind of slim for a 6'4" guy, but good speed and got quickness that we didn't utilize well.
Okay.
But then, like, the route running was very unpolished.
Yeah,
and
you
know, his discipline in kind of understanding what he needed to do and cover. Like, we had to, because of the inability of third-year quarterback, 4th, 5th, 6th year starting wide receivers, had to dumb down our offense. Like, does anybody not recognize how crazy that is? That you have a 3rd-year starter at quarterback and guys who are playing their 4th, 5th, 6th year of collegiate football, and you had to go backwards in how you were implementing your offense. Don't give me, oh, well, they just got here during the fall stuff. This isn't your first season playing collegiate football, man. Like, some of this stuff you should already kind of understand. That goes to show you kind of how poorly some of these guys were being prepared at some of their previous stops, man. Like, you just, it was. And I have to point to, I think, some panic in the evaluation process. Panic's probably not the best word, but you're under the gun and you need to get bodies in here. So you go and you kind of take a flyer on a guy that, from an athletic standpoint, is good, but not polished. And you hope that they can come in and they've got the mental aptitude to get polished quickly. And it just never happened for any of these guys, really. It just they never took that next step that they needed to. Again, I'm talking quarterback and receiver here, and we haven't gotten to the quarterback yet. We will. But the receivers, I think, disappointed me in what they were able to present for this offense.
Yeah.
Caleb Burton was perhaps maybe the bright spot here. And I think I say that because this is someone that I didn't expect to see much of anyway this season. So for us to see him the way that we did, and he was able to make some plays this year, I would say that he actually exceeded my expectations, even though, just like we say the caveat here, I wasn't expecting a lot from him. I was expecting more from other guys. He had 11 receptions for 148 yards this season. So, yeah, I was not expecting that from Caleb Burton this year. I expected to see more of him this upcoming season. So the fact that we did see him was to me, he did exceed expectations, but it was almost kind of like, who do you throw the ball to from this group of transfers?
Yeah.
Let's get into running back, Brian Battie. Thoughts on Brian Battie and how he performed. Now, we can talk about him in a few different ways, from kick return. As the season went on, we didn't see a lot of him running the football. But our thoughts about Brian Battie and how he played this year. I'll start with you first, Ike.
I will say he underperformed my expectations, but I also he's another guy I don't feel like got the kind of opportunities he deserved to get, especially when Jarquez Hunter got off to a slow start during the season. And after Damari Alston got hurt, for whatever reason, we didn't lean on Batty as much as we should have, in my opinion, because he's a more versatile back that you can utilize in a lot of different ways, especially again, when you think about the way that our offense was struggling. Like, seriously, guys, I want you to think back about this and think about how infrequently we called successful running back screens. Just didn't happen, right? Like, we tried to throw a couple of them a few times and they didn't work. We were not good at getting a guy like Brian Batty out in space and letting him utilize his quickness. And he's a better between the tackles runner than he gets credit for. But we didn't use him very effectively in that as well. Like, the number of touches that he had on the season, just it diminished as the season went on. And I get it, Jarquez Hunter, he started to hit his stride. You want to feed him. You definitely do. But then when you go to your second level and Damari's coming back off an injury, you go to the freshman instead. When, as much as I think that Jeremiah Cobb is a talented freshman running back, he's got all the speed in the world. Brian Batty is a mature, understands how to read blocks, downhill running, those small guy. He can do the speed sweep stuff that you were given. He can do everything you asked Jeremiah Cobb to do. And again, I not saying that Cobb didn't deserve touches, or I just think that we could have gotten him the ball more. And then from, I was hoping to see him take one to the house at some point in time. Probably took a couple of them out of the end zone, a little ill-advised at times. Yeah. But he's still a dynamic guy in the return game, and teams legitimately kicked the ball away from him a lot this season. They were just like, look, Sean Jackson can catch that, but please not Brian Batty. Like, so that's when you have teams that fear your returner in that way so much that they're trying to kick like they're doing squib like anything to not get the ball in his hands, then that's someone who threatens another team, and you have to be able to take that into account. I'll say he probably underperformed my expectation of him. I don't think a lot of that was his fault.
Mike?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Ike said. So I don't want to repeat, what he said. I like underutilized. I thought he showed that he's a dangerous return man. And with remember the season started with Jarquez hurt, and Damari and Batty were the guys, and the rotation. Jarquez eventually caught up as the season went along, but the other two I felt like never did. We saw flashes with Cobb. I wonder if it was wise for them, given how they used him down the stretch, to burn his red shirt and give Batty more of those carries. Like, did we need Cobb this year for real? Like, what game do we not win if he doesn't play? Right. Or if you keep him under the 4-game threshold, I should say.
Yeah. Which I thought that they were going to do is like give him some heavy minutes, give him, in those games where it wouldn't have necessarily mattered, or if you just needed to burn his red shirt. But I think, again, you could have given Batty some of those looks and he would have been able to perform and do those things.
Yeah. And I think Damari's injury is when I guess they decided to really lean into Cobb too. When Damari was out. But again, to y'all's point, you could have leaned into Batty as well.
In terms of production, I'm not putting his production woes on him, though. He's extremely talented. Extremely talented guy. And, you're in a new team, and sometimes it takes, everybody's not going to be a hit from play one. I don't know that he got enough time in the run game to get going and find a groove and, gain his footing this season. It's tough. Some dudes are those guys, man. You just throw them out there and they play 2 snaps a game. They're going to house one of them. And, Batty had big play potential, but it didn't come together again, so many issues on offense this year. It's hard to look at a guy like that that's that talented and really place a lot of blame on him in that position. With the amount of what was his play count? Do we have his play count?
Hold on, let me pull it up for you. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we give the listeners this stat in terms of like rushing.
He had 124 total snaps this season.
Okay. In comparison, right, that Jarquez had 225, right? Damari had at total snaps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So never mind. That Jarquez, forget that Jarquez number. I'm talking about like just in the run game.
But let me look at snaps by position here.
Like in the run game, Batty like only 69 snaps is what I see.
Take his special team snaps out of this. He had 108 total snaps, 124, total snaps. 108 as a running back, 12 in the slot, 12 as a split out wide.
Okay.
4 split out wide.
Okay. So, there weren't like a ton. I'm putting, again, the run game snaps in perspective because he's a running back. But to Ike's point, they didn't use him in the screen game very well either, where a guy like that should shine. So you got to figure out what the system is going into year 2, and you utilize your talent better. I felt like they could have snuck out a win or two with better talent utilization this year. A lot of people complained about the level of the talent, but I also feel like some blame lies with how they used a lot of these guys. They didn't get everything they could out of this roster this year, and some of that is on the coaching.
All right, gentlemen. QB.
Oh, yeah, one. So I'm actually grading Peyton Thorne on the same curve that I did some of these other guys in terms of the system did not help him very much.
The QB switching.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest.
I don't even like the QB switching thing. Anyway, Mike, you talk your points. I'll talk after.
Yeah, look. The floor, again, grading on the same curve in terms of what's on him and what's on the system. System did not help him very much, but he had, just similar to Fairweather, I felt like he had a higher floor than what we saw, despite some of the things that we saw that happened around him. There's absolutely no way that you're looking at this season and you're thinking, okay, all he needs is receivers. Now, some of this is between the ears, just like it is for some of the other players. So, to put that in perspective, a lot of people felt like, based on his career averages, the floor was 2,600 yards in passing. That's a little bit below average in today's college football. And but it's prolific here at Auburn. Auburn has had one 3,000-yard passer in the whole history of the program, like one or two, I think. It just doesn't happen. And so I think the excitement was not necessarily about top end, game-breaking plays. It was about doing the routine things consistently well in the passing game. And that didn't happen. And he had some frustrating interceptions at times. I would have been, if this season had ended around like 2,200 yards for Thorne and just a couple less interceptions, I could really, I'd be really, really, I'd had no doubt about him headed into year 2. Because I can say, yes, he had 400 or 500 yards of regression based on play calling and drops and wide receiver play. But 1,000 to 1,200 yards of regression,
right?
Some of that's on him. And again, we assigned that same blame to everybody else that didn't play well. Some of it was on them, some of it was on the system. But you're not having 1,200 yards of regression because your receivers are dropping that many balls. Like I need statistically, that's nearly impossible at this level. They'd have to drop everything, just about. You need like a 60% drop rate for him to have that sort of regression. But again, a percentage on him, percentage on the talent around him, a percentage on the coaching. And what you look at when you're evaluating these players is what was within the player's control. Because there were some of those passes where he dropped back and conditions were perfect and a play just wasn't made. And this is what I'm talking about when I say this is where Auburn expected Thorne to raise the floor in terms of the routine things. Now, we just talked about O-line. We opened up talking about O-line, saying, hey, listen, O-line didn't stand out as a super negative this year. It might have been the best O-line you ever seen, but, man, they really stabilized that. A thing that had been a super black mark on Auburn the last few seasons. So we can't really sit here and say, he didn't have any protection and he was running for his life. Not true. He utilized his legs, I thought, well at times this year. But the decision-making, I can point it out in some of the watch the films about, making the right decision between keeping and giving and making the right read, eyes in the wrong spot. There were some things that Payton Thorne will need to fix going into year 2. I would just caution people that just throwing some receivers out there isn't going to fix all his ails. It's not, right? There were some things there that I think if you asked him, he'd tell you he needed to improve. So I'm going to say that he underperformed expectations, but I want to add the same caveat to everybody else. The offensive system was bad this year. Like, I get that they don't have the players that to do what they want to do, but there was a version of this that would have sufficed for better than this for year 1. I think Payton Thorne, he suffered the QB switching. Like, it didn't help any of the quarterbacks. Like, it's not my main point about this whole thing.
Sure,
but I'm just looking at the things he could have controlled, and I'm thinking he was a little below average on the things that he could control.
I think you use that as if you're trying to help. I mean, all of these points go together, in my opinion, Mike. If you're trying to help Payton Thorne, you give him the starting job to help him. If you're still trying to help him, you can't, like, the QB switching did not do that. That was counterproductive for most QBs that's trying to learn a new system. But even when it came time to just play ball, 3-year starter, and you just don't see guys, or you see them and you're holding the ball, right?
Yeah.
There were just certain things like, listen, at some point, once you get past all of that, you got to play ball.
Yeah.
And there were times where Payton made plays, but there was a lot of times from a 3-year starter, you just expected a guy to just make some plays and ball.
Yeah, it was not always clear on tape that he had done everything right, and then it just didn't go right.
Right.
And so, like I said, you have to give him the same grace that you're giving other people when you talk about how bad the system was this year. A lot of people were really down on the players, and we may not have had, like, Auburn may not have had like championship offensive roster this year, but certainly I think it was 1 to 2 games better than where they ended. You lost to New Mexico State. Right. Don't tell me that was not a talent issue.
Right.
The 7 wins right there. You played well enough offensively, really, to beat Palma. It came down to a defensive play. If you can find a touchdown or 10 points versus Georgia, like, there were so many things that I just thought this wasn't really about the players. The system really, it hurt these guys. And I think that Payton, this was the fewest attempts he's had in his career by a long shot in a season. 239 attempts on the season is dead last in the SEC for quarterbacks with at least 8 starts. So the same opportunities the receivers weren't getting, he also wasn't getting those opportunities. Now, why he wasn't getting those opportunities, I jump into that, right? Like why they managed him the way they did frustrated me a lot this season. I was like, you brought him here to throw, and then you're running a game plan that's suited for Robbie Ashford's legs. And in a sense, you're taking away opportunities for him to figure it out with his arm. They could have won 6 games a lot of ways this year and used those snaps more productively, if you ask me. If you were only going to win 6, because that's only 1 game better than last year. And you didn't lose to your New Mexico State last year. Come on, man. They could have done better for Peyton. Peyton could have done better for Auburn. It was. I think any objective person will tell you that was also, with all the things we marked under expectations, that also falls under any reasonable expectation you had set for him.
Yeah,
Okay. This is probably the most negative you will ever hear me be about Peyton Thorne, because I actually think that he is not as bad as he looked this season.
I agree with
but
that.
let's be clear about a couple of things. And you can send all of your hate mail and statements directly to me on Twitter. If you want to, you can see the @ handle right here about if you disagree with what I'm about to say, I'm fine with that. But let's talk about expectations. My expectation for Peyton Thorne was going to be closer to 3,000 passing yards this season. He didn't sniff that. My expectation for Peyton Thorne was going to be the floor of what our quarterback room was. I don't believe he accomplished that. For all of the, you guys started talking about the QB switching thing. Peyton Thorne didn't give the coaches a reason to not put somebody else in the football game early in the season. We can talk about, he came in during the fall and he didn't have a spring block. He was a 2-year starter when he came in, guys. He's not some freshman who never got an opportunity somewhere else. He played 2 full seasons as a starting quarterback at a Power 5 school. He shouldn't need as much time to come in and be adequate, not amazing. I'm not asking him to come in and be amazing. Be adequate to start the season. He wasn't that. You expect him with all of the, we don't have the offensive line and we don't have the skill. With all of that, you expect a 2-year starter to come in and raise the floor of what you can do, because he's the guy that's going to come in and get everybody on the right page. He knows the play. Everybody talked about how well he knew the playbook in the offseason. But then when you got him to go out there and actually execute the plays, he's not doing it. That's not about talent. That ain't about the wide receivers. That's about Peyton Thorne. I watched Peyton Thorne walk up to the line of scrimmage and see defenders coming and never even do anything to acknowledge them. 3rd-year starters should be able to do that sort of thing, especially when you run an offense that gives you answers for those things. He should be able to do that. Or he should be able to say, we don't have the right play call on, timeout, coach. Not, well, let's just run it anyway and then get sacked. Not, there's guys running wide open and I just don't throw the ball. I hold it until I get sacked. No, that's not what you expect at 3rd. If he was a freshman coming in again, or he hadn't started a full season's worth of games or something like that, I'd expect some of those things early. He did get better as the season went on, understanding how to utilize his legs in this system. I will give him full credit for that. He vastly underperformed my expectations for a 3rd-year starter. Again, I was expecting the floor to be raised. I didn't think Peyton Thorne's ceiling.
Yeah, you're not going to take the top off.
Right. Yeah. I didn't think his ceiling was going to explode this offense. I expected the floor to be raised. And I asked this question before. I'll ask it again. How many games fewer does Auburn win if Peyton Thorne never suits up for Auburn? And I don't think the answer to that is any.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think you land in this exact. So again, you
Mhm.
didn't raise your floor. You didn't have better offensive production, and you didn't win more games. If we had produced more on offense, but we're still lost the same amount of games, I'd say, okay, he potentially raised the floor and we're off to the races as a hit. We're literally in the same spot offensively this offseason as we were last offseason with Peyton Thorne coming in. You didn't raise the floor. And that to me is an underperforming of expectations. Having said all of that, and I know everybody who's mad at me has stopped listening already, I don't think Peyton Thorne was bad. He was just okay. But I was expecting third-year starter to do a bit better than just okay, especially with his arm.
Okay.
Especially with his arm.
Okay. Um, what do you look forward to in Peyton Thorne next year then? I mean,
Well,
that may be premature
okay.
considering what's coming in. What do you build on? How do you build on that?
Okay, so personally, I think at least defensively, the SEC is a different beast than all the other conferences. You know, if there were a conference that were closer defensively, it's probably the Big Ten. But quite honestly, the averages kind of held true for Peyton Thorne. Like he was always kind of like a low 60% completion percentage guy, but he just got a lot more opportunities to throw the ball at Michigan State, like 30 plus a game. So when you cut that by like 10, you're going to cut production because the averages were kind of held true in terms of completion percentage. You're lowering the amount of yards, right? And you had to find a way to run an offense where the yard per throw was higher, given the completion percentage, if that makes sense. Yeah, higher average per throw. And they just didn't run an offense that made it possible for him. But I have to agree with Ike. My expectation was not at 3,000 yards. It was somewhere between 25 and 2,800.
Well, I expected it to be a lot closer to 3,000 than it was.
Correct. Than where it was.
Yeah.
And so when he said it didn't improve over last year, I do want to put that in perspective, right? And this is why I say some of it is on the system and some of it is on the player. Robbie Ashford threw for like 80 less yards than Peyton Thorne did this year. Plus, people forget he ran for over 900 yards last season. And I went back and looked at the snaps. Remember, for the first 3 games, Robbie was splitting snaps with TJ. And when you look at the snap split between Thorne and Ashford this year, it all but cancels out. Right. So, they were split. Both quarterbacks split time with another quarterback for a significant portion of the season that would have lowered their opportunities, their overall opportunities. And the production from a total yard standpoint was still higher. And to me, that's system. They let Robbie Ashford let it rip more. But he was playing with one arm behind his back as well, too. So when you bring in a healthy quarterback, I'm just thinking it's got to go up because how much worse could it get from a quarterback with a hurt throwing shoulder in a system where over the last 4 games, Caddy went super old school on us in terms of throwing the ball. Them attempts went down, and they were trying to get through it. And I'm not saying that was the wrong tactic, because it almost produced the win versus Mississippi State. They ran for a ton of yards on Nick Saban, the most in the Saban era at Alabama. The talent was there. Like I said, the floor was so low last year. It was hard not to expect it to be higher this year from that position. The bar was on the floor. You had a hurt quarterback most of the season. You fired your coach midseason. You had a ton of offensive turmoil. You bring in an offensive guy with an experienced QB, and you just expect it to be better than what we saw. That's it. Now, I saw Stuart Donald had a comment in here that said, while we're asking these questions, are we also asking were our expectations realistic? Right. Were the expectations too high?
I don't feel like I put high
Yeah,
expectations on any. Listen, man, if you watch Michigan State and you look, just average out the 2 years that he had, where everybody's like, "Oh, he has all the talent in the world," didn't have all the talent. It still is drastically below that when he was going to come into a situation with one of the best running back rooms in the country and a decent offensive line. I did not have enormously high expectations for. I've said this multiple times throughout this conversation. My expectations for some of these guys was way lower than everybody else's was, and they still didn't meet those expectations. I don't feel as if the expectations I had for any of these guys was too high. I don't know that any of them were set up for success when you're talking about skill player / quarterback. And I don't know that any of these guys still, with the opportunities that they had, maximized them. Whether they were set up for success or not, the opportunities that were in front of you, you could have maximized and you didn't.
Yeah. Again, 238-39 attempts on the season at a 62% completion percentage is too low. I mean, they didn't throw the ball enough, and they were trying to manage their way through these seasons. I think I make this point as well too. There were a lot of ways to get to 6-6. And this was the most painful way to get to 6-6.
Yeah.
You fired your coach last year and you finished one game better than last season. And, the floor was supposed to be significantly higher with a QB guy as a coach, an offensive mind as a coach, an OC that coached RG3, and a quarterback that had 2 full years starting at the Power 5 level. He's played in big games. He's made big-time throws, 11-2 season. I think if we're looking at the things only Peyton Thorne can control, right, that he could have done better, you cannot just completely point to the guys around him. You can't. Yeah. We've not given any, since we've been doing the war report, we've not given any quarterback that excuse for the most part, right? Like I can admit when the line is not good, certainly. But, we talked about Bo in the same vein, TJ in the same vein in terms of making plays that are there, right? Like, some of them picks that he threw to start, was it last season,
Who?
TJ. Like, when you looked at some of this, it was unfortunate. It's like,
yeah, no.
We found out later there was a bad route run on one of those plays.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that a single one of those interceptions was.
Yeah, it was tough.
They were
man.
all
Looking at
they were all avoidable.
So. Yeah, and so when you evaluated that objectively, they had to move on from him because you were going into SEC play, and it's like, well, the other guy can run. So let's move to him now. Like Missouri, it looked rough, and then LSU, they switched it up, and he had his career high 337 yards passing or whatever Robbie did. I thought 200 yards per 200 to 230 yards per game and a touchdown from Peyton Thorne would have been a bang up season. 1 touchdown per game. And Auburn probably wins 2 more with that production. How many games this year versus Power 5 opponents did they not hit 100 yards passing?
Way too many.
Yeah, that's not all on him, but again, for the things that he can control, I don't know how you don't look at that and say, yeah, he didn't play up to the expectations, because it's not all just about production. He still could have come off that 26 to 2,800 yards that everybody was expecting. If he finishes at 2,200 yards this season, I'm probably sitting here really hopeful for next year.
Yeah. Again,
but 1,200 yards of regression is
the question
tough.
You ask about expectations for next season is, first and foremost, goes back to what Mike says. I expect our coaching staff to figure out what we can do with the quarterbacks and weapons that we have effectively and implement a game plan that makes sense for them. It's going to start there. Does the game plan make sense for the personnel? If we start there, then everybody's going to play better because you're putting them in better positions to do that. Number 2, and this is something that I saw improvement with Peyton Thorne on throughout the season, him just deciding, you know what, I'm going to throw the freaking football. I'm gonna get to the back of this drop at whether it's 3-5 or it's a one-step turn and pivot and throw, and I'm gonna throw the ball where it's supposed to go to a guy who's supposed to be there. And he did that more often as the season went on, which is why you started to see the wide receiver issues pop up more, because they actually got the ball thrown in their direction. So it's like, okay, now go make a play. And you saw guys not able to make a play in some of those situations. And you saw some guys make some plays in those situations. I'm thinking about the slant route early in the Bama game, right, to Caleb Burton. Javarius Johnson later in the season getting some late season touchdowns, the stuff that, again, I get some of those were poor teams that we were playing, but I don't care how good or bad the team is. I need you to perform up to the level that you're capable of doing it. So I expect better offensive game planning around our talent, and I expect better execution from a guy now in year 2 of this system. Yeah. You don't get the I didn't come in during the spring.
Yeah, a lot.
And all of that. I don't care when the wide receivers got here. I don't want to hear any. You need to raise the floor of what our expectations and ability are from the quarterback standpoint, because you have a whole season under your belt doing this, and you should have the weapons that are able to go out there and make plays.
I would even caution against the weapons argument, because I'm telling you, in my eyes, the one I expect to start game 1 is Cam Coleman. I expect Cam Coleman,
but I expect him to go out and secure somebody in the portal that's
sure
come in and start, and hopefully they hold on to it.
And we'll see how that goes, because if we're judging them based on what we just judged, and how the guys who they brought in performed, they got some proving to do in terms of how they evaluate kids from the portal. A lot of people have to understand, there's not just a bunch of diamonds in the rough sitting in the portal. There may be some hidden talents here or there, but it's more important, I think, that you have a system that kids can plug into and play well than it is that you're looking for a savior every time you go to the portal. So you still build programs from recruiting out of high school. You filled needs and gaps with the portal and JUCOs and things of that nature. But they're still a year away from, I think, being where Hugh Freeze is going to want to be in terms of being able to run the type of offense that has 400 to 450 pass attempts by the QB a year. So I would pump the brakes just a tiny bit on he's going to have the weapons next year. They may be talented, but they certainly won't have the experience. And, maybe we should just be cautious about what the expectations are for a lot of these guys, because I'm going to lose my mind if Cam Coleman drops a couple balls because he's getting adjusted to play at the SEC level, and people are like, oh, man, see, he can't catch. It's weird how guys get here and then suddenly it's like they can't play football anymore. Well, they were good at their previous stops.
Some of the best receivers in the country this year had a bunch of drops. Again, I've said this over and over again. Like, it's a thing that happens. People drop passes, and you can, you're a Power 5 receiver, you're supposed to make that catch. Yes, and human. They made a mistake on that play. You're a Power 5 quarterback, you're supposed to make that throw. Yes, and I'm not perfect. I'm gonna miss some of them.
Yeah. It happens. I saw Malik Neighbors had one of the crazy seasons I've ever seen in the last 10, and
had some of the most ridiculous routine drops of passes that you've ever seen.
I was like, wait,
how did you drop that one?
For a guy who was, to me, he was the best wide receiver in college football this year. Yeah, I don't care. They gave it to Marvin Harrison Jr., but come on, bro. He was 400 yards behind Neighbors and a ton of touchdowns. I didn't understand it.
It was a lifetime achievement award. I mean,
I guess, yeah. I didn't get it. Neighbors to me was the clear best receiver in the country, but he had to Ike's point. We watched those games. He had some really disappointing drops at times, and untimely drops as well too. First down drops and it's tough. So, but when I think, again, this is why I go back to system, guys. But when the attempts are so low, the drops stand out a lot more.
Sure.
right? When you're only getting 20 targets a season and you drop a couple passes, then you go back and you look at the percentages and they're like, oh, no, he dropped 10% of his passes. That's crazy. It's like, yeah, 20 targets in a inconsistent pass game. So they've got to figure out how to throw the ball next year with more regularity. That's what I'm going to be looking for, because my expectations are not high. I've been taking heat for a couple weeks on this take, but going into next season, I do not have 8-9 win. I think they would be good to win 6 or 7 games and show some progress moving forward statistically and from a development standpoint with your young guys.
It's way too early for me to have any projections on next season, but if we run it back with the same group, then I don't know how you improve your record.
Right. Yeah. In record, it's going to be difficult, and the schedule gets harder next year as well, too. To me, the schedule's significantly harder next year. So you don't play LSU, but man, maybe you wish you did with Jaden Daniels going to that defense, because you pick up Oklahoma. Now, I know they're losing a QB too, but if I had to pick one right now, I definitely want to keep LSU on the schedule.
Yeah, Oklahoma has the better defense, I would assume.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. They've got to, next year, I think you can take steps forward. I think Peyton Thorne could throw for 2,800 yards next year, and they could still only win 7 games the way that schedule lays out. You're losing some key pieces on defense as well, too. I don't think it's going to be about record in 2024. I think you have a great win, and then you need the marquee upset win next year. That's why the
marquee
to upset them, not get upset.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you need to upset somebody next year. Hugh Freeze needs to outcoach one of these big-time coaches next year. I think he can do it with this. Right, he came so close this year. Ron Roberts, I think he's got something cooking. Like, I don't know, man.
The defense still has a lot to figure out too. So
we'll see. There's a lot of stuff to look at there, but I do think that you can show improvement and still only win like 6 or 7 games next year, right? And sell a lot of promise and continue to sell playing time and opportunity to recruits. Bring in another top 10 recruiting class. I certainly think Auburn's going to finish top 10 now in terms of recruiting. And you Hugh Freeze, in your first 2 recruiting cycles, you got 2 top 10 classes. You're cooking. Going into 2025, they just got to have a quarterback. And then now you're starting to look at 8-9 win seasons, because you got one of the. Let's say they keep this receiver class intact. Plus, you add a game, a playmaking QB to the situation. Woo! I know that's part of what was sold to these kids that committed. Right? Like, you don't have to worry. Year 1. You're going to get opportunities. By year 2, you guys are all going to be seriously thinking about going pro, because we're going to cook in year 2. I'm going to go out. I will spare no cost. I'm sorry, in year 3 for Hugh Freeze, but year 2 for the kids that are coming in this year, to go out and find the right QB to get the ball to my receivers. You can't save all the NIL money for that. Whether it's out of high school or in the portal, you cannot miss in 2025 at QB. You can't. So,
listen, gentlemen, we spent a lot of time talking offense. Let's get to the drawing. We're giving away a mug courtesy of GWT2 Energy Consulting Services. Run that, Ike.
Yep, let's get to it. Somebody's got to win this here mug, and we appreciate everybody who has entered to win. Somebody's going to actually get it. C Long. If you're here, holla at your folks so we can get you this mug out there in the mail. While we're waiting on C Long, let's make sure we give quick shout out to the sponsor of the War Report today. That is Manscaped. Manscaped is a one-stop shop for all of your holiday needs. They have the perfect gift in the Performance Package 5.0, which includes loads of perfect stocking stuffers. What could be better than giving the gift of good hygiene and a few laughs? Is their Boxer Game week? Take care of the chestnuts with Manscaped 2.0, featuring their signature jewel pouch to keep calm, cool, and collected. Get 20% off and free shipping with code report at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com when you use code report. Say ho, ho, ho to a well-groomed mistletoe with Manscaped.
All right. Waiting to hear from C Long if he's here. People are saying you gone. Oh, he's here. He is here. We need you to email us, man. Business at the War Report. Business at the War Report. We need your physical address. Send that to us, and we will send you your mug. Congratulations, guys. Let's grab some of these comments and get out of here. We'll talk defense. We spent this episode talking offense. Good conversation, but we will try to tackle defense, whether it's a morning drop or another midweek report. We'll figure that out. Auburn Dad, we appreciate you gifting 5 War Report memberships. Congrats to those who were able to get that. Auburn Dad also chimes in and says, "I'm so booging for this early signing day and the portal." A lot of people are excited.
We got 10 days until kids must send in letters of intent.
So we got another. This is actually the final weekend that you're hosting, right? Because it goes into a dead period.
Yeah, they've been recruiting their asses off the last week. Like,
yeah, they have.
Woof. They out there. They all showed up to Ryan Williams games. Like Freeze was there, Aldridge was there, Davis was there, Caddy was there.
Oof,
well, they came out. Yeah, they went out, and he returned a kickoff for a touchdown. And I don't if anybody saw that. Saraland lost in epic. Like the quarterback is actually a Texas commit. DJ
Lacey, I think.
DJ Lacey, yeah. I did not understand the call, Caesar. Was it
a called QB draw? Because that's the question. Whether or not
I'm sorry.
A call draw.
The clock management, like he ran 20 seconds off the clock, and I thought if they're running down the clock, they're going to kick the field goal and play for overtime. And then they went for the win, but the clock would have stopped on the first down and you would have had time to get up there and spike it and run a couple more plays. The coach blew that. I mean, he blew that. I didn't understand it. Those kids deserved better, man. I did not understand running the clock down and then, you know what I mean, doing what they did. Like, it didn't make any sense. You leave more time on the clock.
That's right. It was KJ Lacey that was the quarterback's name.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you're going to run the clock down, leave no time left after the last play, it's because you're expecting to tie the game up minimum, which meant kicking the field goal. Maybe their kicker was hurt. I didn't understand. I didn't understand that call at all. It was a chip shot field goal at that.
Ephesians, appreciate you being with us today. Says after last year's transfers, I'm not super excited, and the expectations are low for this year for him.
Yeah, I think just reasonable expectations in the portal, right? Like,
yeah, I don't agree with this fully. I think that this coaching staff had a pretty hefty task in front of them to come in just before early signing day and figure out how to get that signing class where it needed to be, and then turn their attention to the portal as well. I think we've got a better chance of having higher performers in the portal this season than we had last season because of the truncated. You got to think some of these guys had literally just gotten hired like 2 weeks before early signing day. And then and this is the thing I cautioned everybody against. Most of the better players in the portal are going to be your spring signees. You're not going to get a lot of transformational talent in that second portal window after spring. And they just didn't have a ton of time to go out and really get anybody in here. The one problem, and this is a very big problem, is the thing that Mike and I have been harping on this entire season. I don't know that you gave a good enough proof of concept on the field to attract quality transfer talent for this season.
Right.
You might can sell the future to some kids that are coming out of high school because they got 4 to 5 years of eligibility. But if you're going to find transformational transfer for portal talent, they need to see something now.
Yeah.
And I don't think we put that on the field this last year.
No. It's you maybe didn't see, like, especially at wide receiver, right? Like, you didn't see a ton of attempts, and you got likely the same quarterback. I know that people are hoping where there's a lot of fan bases. They want the UCLA quarterback. I think he picked the spot already. They were talking about
Moore.
Yeah, they were talking about Cam Ward, and like folks are all over the place. And I'm like, here's what I would expect: nothing. I'd expect Payton Thorne and Holden Geriner and Robbie Ashford to take you through the spring. And I doubt that if you're not going to bring in a post spring QB unless it is Arch Manning. So you're going into next year, your expectation should be that the coaching staff utilizes the talent better than they did this year. Again, may not pay off in wins and losses, but it can certainly look better and create some excitement for next year. And then you have a better proof of concept for the portal the following year. But I'm like, I don't think you put it on the field this year, especially not offensively. Defensively, yeah, you want some of what Ron Roberts is cooking, right?
Philip Coleman says, have y'all heard anything about Perry Thompson? Because people on the Facebook fan page are swearing he's flipping back to Bama.
Yeah, look, I think personally, was a bunch of Bama fans perpetuating this. Just trying. It's so easy, guys, to get on the internet and just literally say anything, and then it becomes a whole rumor. These guys are recruiting hard for Auburn. I'm not expecting any flip here. Obviously, anything's possible, but you're 10 days to signing day, and these guys have actively recruited each other, right? Like, they've actively recruited each other, and Perry Thompson has been part of that. So I don't know. I wouldn't expect it.
I don't pay attention to what people say on any of those sites, so no.
Yeah.
K. Smalls, welcome. P-Pass says, but if you redshirt Jeremiah Cobb, does he go to the portal?
No.
There's no
Remember
why he should go to the portal.
No, remember, you can play in 4 games and preserve the red shirt. Yeah. Right. So it's not about not playing them at all. It's just about like, hey, how much are you really
not burning his year of eligibility?
Yeah, if you don't really need him down this stretch, that should be an easy sell to kids now. Back in the day, you didn't have a whole 4 games to play a kid. Right.
It's really no difference because you didn't utilize him a lot down the stretch of the season. You play him a little bit less, and he has an additional year of eligibility. What's to be upset about that in the long run?
Yeah.
I mean, if he transfers because he didn't play in more snaps his freshman year, then I'd question his level of commitment, because it's not as if you've got bad running backs playing in front of you. Like,
you knew the situation coming in.
If your run game's terrible and he's not playing, then he's like, oh man, I'm out of here. But you've got really good running backs that are playing. So yeah. I don't know that if that would have been his attitude, I'd have been like, all right, kid. Well,
we'll recruit
best wishes.
Yeah.
Chris S says Cobb probably won't stay more than 3 years regardless. I don't think the red shirt is relevant here.
We'll see. I mean, look, dude, more than 3 years. So I don't understand.
Like, he's saying that if you redshirt him, he's still only going to play for 3 years regardless. So like, you might as well get all 3 years out of him, because
it depends.
Because you cannot foresee injuries, right? Like, I'm telling you, you'd rather just save the year of eligibility just in case something completely out of the realm of possibility happens, right? Like Jarquez is supposed to be gone after this year,
right?
But because of the way it went, he's got to come back. And so if you're Cobb, you definitely would rather have the extra year of eligibility than to not have it if something doesn't go as planned along the way.
Even if that means transfer portal, you'd rather have that additional
year. Yep, that's right. Yeah, to go in the portal and then still have 4 years to play at another school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Imani Smoot, appreciate the super chat. He says, my expectation was 15-0. I thought Thorne would throw for over 3,000 yards with a dominant run game and defense. My expectation isn't changing next year either. An undefeated season is what I expect next year too.
Full send.
It ain't Imani.
We have missed the Imani energy, baby.
If it wouldn't be you if it was anything less than this, Imani. So keep the optimism going. We love to hear from you. Appreciate the super chat. War Eagle to you, my friend.
Yeah.
Big Gap gifted 5 War Report memberships as well. Congrats to those who just received that. I tell people what you can expect if you were not one of the people who were gifted a membership, but you want to be a member.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Really quickly, hit that join button and you can get all of the membership benefits that are there, including film reviews. I got a ton of it on. Like, I asked the community what they wanted to see, and I've been prepping film for it, so you guys can expect me to be rolling through a lot of that stuff as we get prepared for the next season. Membership gifting can happen. We've already seen that from Big Gap and from Auburn Dad today. Appreciate those folks. If you didn't get a chance to win something today, you can go to the store, warreport.com, and shop there and get something, and hit up the folks on the network. Auburn Express is where we are. Up-Tempo Podcast, College Loop, Just a Sec podcasts, all available for you to listen to wherever you want to and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Before you get out of here, please be sure to share this video, smash that like button, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. We're on Instagram, Twitter, at The War Report, and we're TW Report for TikTok. We will see you tomorrow with the morning drop. We'll come up with something dope to talk about as per usual. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And as always, War Eagle.
War Eagle.